Welcome. We are going to set up a free software program called Blender, version 2.8, in order to assist us with our virtual world we're going to be creating, as well as allowing us to model and 3D print items to be used in our real environment. So we just have to do a couple settings here, and let's get on with this. Now this video does assume that you've already downloaded the program, you've already installed it, there's an initial splash screen that you automatically do things to, and then from that point on the program will open up this initial splash screen. And that's where we'd be at right now. So, watch through this video, understand kind of what we're doing here. Then as soon as you get done watching this, you can download the program and follow through again or whatever. I'm actually kind of basing this off of this other YouTuber known as the 3D Printing Professor. He came out with a video here setting up the program for 3D printing. And for the most part, I'm going to quickly cover, in a nutshell, everything that he covers in that 20-minute video. But there are some details that are specific to the project I'm working on that I want to make sure that we get here in this video. So once you open up Blender, you'll see that splash screen. The second time you open up Blender, just click in the work environment itself, and it will clear that right off. It'll show you the cube in the middle of it, and what we want to do here is we want to take a look at some dimensions and get ourselves really associated with the transform panel, because we're going to be opening, closing it quite a bit here. So you'll notice that there is an arrow to the right-hand side, upper right-hand side, little tiny arrow. And if you click on that arrow, it'll bring up the transform panel. Now, there's an easier way of doing it. If you just push the letter N on your keyboard, it will automatically bring that transform panel. Now, you notice on this transform panel, there are 3 different tabs, which are the view, tool, and item tabs. And it is in the item tab that shows the dimensions on the bottom of the dialog of the object that you currently have selected. And you'll notice that those dimensions are like 2 meters for the XYZ, and we don't want a 6-foot cube on the screen. The printer bed, the 3D printer bed that I have, is 200 millimeters. So everything that we do and model is going to be in that spot, even though our initial model is going to be much larger. The virtual model will be. So you'll notice off to the right-hand side, there's a little icon. It has like a cone and 2 circles in it. That is the scene context. And so if you click on that scene context, there are several items off to the right-hand side with a little arrow that you can drop down more information. And so it's just a little off to the right and up. You'll see the units drop-down menu. And you'll want to drop down that menu because there are a couple things we have to cover with that. So, with the we'll see that the unit system says metric, and that's good. We want metric. We're going to be working with metric, and that's good. But where it says meters for the length, we need to change that. We don't want meters. We want millimeters. So if you click on that and drop down the units, you can go ahead and click millimeters there. And the other thing we got to change here on this is the unit scale. It says 1.0. We want that to be 0.001, and that should accurately present our cube and objects where we need them to be. So once we hit the letter N again, and it gets rid of that panel, we do see that cube. Well, if you hit N right now, it shows it as being at 2 millimeters. But go ahead and hit N again, get rid of that. You'll notice that our grid has vanished. So we're going to need to change some other things here. Up top, we do have like this, these two circles, one outline and one solid. And this is our viewport displays, overlays, viewport overlays icon. And once we click down that, we see a scale value there as well that we're going to have to change from 1.0 to 0.001 as well. Click on N again. You remember those tabs I mentioned, where it says Item, Tools, and View? This time we need the View tab. We don't need the Item tab, we need the View tab. And once going into that, it has this information dealing with clipping. And basically that shows how close we can get to an object and how far away we can see the virtual world at that point too, before it starts clipping off. And we want to be able to get really close to our model, because it's just a little model, it's in millimeters, but we also want to get the broad span of everything that we're working on. Now the focal length will remain the same. It's only the clip start and the distance end that you need to change. The clip start will need to change to 0.01, and the distance end we need to change to 10,000 millimeters. Very good. So have you been keeping up here? You're doing great. To the right of that, it's called the outliner. It's where you see your objects, particularly the only object that we have in the screen. I mean, we still have a light, we still have the camera. We're not worried about getting rid of those quite yet, to be honest. But the box itself, the cube, if you double click where it says cube in that thing, it's called an outliner, it will give you the option to change the name of it. Go ahead and change that to the name floor, and it's just to keep everything organized. All right. Up top, we have tabs, modes, and we're going to need to change this into a modeling mode. So you see where it says modeling up there? You're going to need to click that, and you notice that the cube's going to change. It's going to show its vertexes as well as its edges better, because now we are in edit mode. And we just have to do something in this mode that will help us work a little bit easier with this cube that we're going to change into a floor. So you're going to be using your keyboard for this. On your keyboard, with your mouse inside the program, of course, you're going to need to press G. It stands for grab, and then you're going to need to type Z, which is the axis that we're going to be moving that cube on, and then you're going to be typing -1, and that will knock that cube below the platform. And that's perfect. That's exactly what we need. So, I mentioned that this is in what's called edit mode, because you'll see that on the top of it, it currently says edit mode. We need to change that to object mode, and so if you click on that and drop it down, it'll give you object mode as an option. It's funny because we lost our grid again when we went into modeling mode here. And the same thing happened to the reference video that I used. So grids, grid lines back to 0.001 as its scale. So that should fix that up just really nicely. All right, so we call this the floor. We're going to be making a floor to represent our area for the 3D printer. I mentioned to you that my Anycubic Mega S printer has a 200 millimeter, I think it's like 220 millimeter, but I'm not going to get into all that. We're just going to say 200 millimeters. And you're going to find that 200 millimeters is not that big of space with the scale work we're going to be doing with this. So if you go ahead and click the N, your cube should be selected there. Click N, brings that transform panel, right? On the bottom of that is dimensions. And because we're going to be making a floor, we're going to need to change the X and the Y, and the Z we're going to make thin. The reference video that the 3D printing professor did, he made it into an outline form. We're not going to worry about that because I like seeing what we're working on. So where it says dimensions, it says X, we're going to need to change that to 200 millimeters. Where it says Y, clicking that, you'll see it change, boom. Y, 200 millimeters, boom. And then the Z, you're going to change it to 2 millimeters. So that'll be thin, everything else is going to be wide. That's awesome. If you scroll out with your, if you have a mouse button, a scroll wheel, you can scroll out and see the entire table area. Awesome. All right. Okay. So just for reference, we're going to add, for scale's sake, a little panel on the floor of this, so you can kind of understand what's going on here. You'll notice this is just a grid that I've got pertains to the part of the area of the real project that I'm working on. I'll show you this later on because you're going to need to get an assessment of this when we start working on it. Each one of these blocks, right? Imagine each one of those blocks. You have the guy standing on it right there, right? Each one of these blocks is 2 feet. So you have the guy right there. He averages out to be about my height there, 5'11". So yeah, so these are 2-foot blocks. But we're working with metric here, and they are not. We're not going to be working with feet in the program. We're going to be continuing with metric because it makes it easier and more precise when coming up with these. So we're going to put in a panel onto the floor just to give you an idea of the size of one of these blocks in comparison with our 3D printing platform. Awesome, huh? So you'll notice up top there, just kind of a little lower than and to the right of the mode, the object mode that's currently set for, you'll see a button there that says Add. When you go ahead and press on Add, it brings up a context menu, and you'll want to choose on that context menu the word Mesh. Once you hit Mesh, it'll bring up different shapes to the right, and we would like to have a cube. So go ahead and select Cube there, and it'll give us a, one of those cubes that we originally started working with. So once we've got that cube there, and that's selected, once you hit N, brings it that transform panel. I am going to have, now remember this dimension. I have to remember this dimension. It's very important. The dimension that we're going to be working with X and Y is 48 millimeters. Got it? So 48 millimeters in X and Y, and then we're going to be putting in the Z 2 millimeters. And because we didn't, grab this cube and bring it down, it's going to be slightly elevated from the actual initial floor that we have. 48 millimeters is equal to 2 feet when we start building our model. All right. We're basically done here. The whole thing is set up where we need it to be. And, you notice that it's got that, you can now see the size of 2 feet according to the printer bed. It's not that big. I mean, you could imagine if we were to model a toilet per se, it's going to take up a pretty good amount of that printer bed. That printer bed is not that big. It's like a little under 8 inches, I think. It's not that big. So I can't believe the 3D printing professor does 100, because that's tiny, but it's his general way of doing it. But for our projects, it's going to be 200 millimeters, and that's a 2-foot spot. Which means when I do 3D printing, it's going to, and they're larger objects, they're going to be multiple prints. And so that's going to be fun. But this is the way we want our thing. We want it to be as it is every time we open up this program, okay? And so we're going to go up to the File menu, up left-hand side, File, click on that, go down to Defaults, and then select Save Startup File. So we're going to have this every time Blender opens for us. We do need a couple tools. If you go to Edit, just to the right of that, File menu, go to Edit, go down to Preferences, and then under Preferences, in the middle there, middle left, is Add-ons. You're going to click on that. And in that search bar, top right, you're going to put STL. And only one thing I think will pop up here, and that is the Import-Export STL. Make sure that that is checked, and then that's golden. And then the next one that we need is 3D print. Put 3D print in the search engine. We'll need the 3D print toolbox. Make sure that one is checked. And there's also a Bool Tools one that we're probably going to add on later. I'll show it when I didn't make a panel for it, so we're not going to include that here. So, wow, I hope everyone has a good day. We've got a couple more videos I plan on doing here, and yeah, this is going to be a trip once we get the ball rolling.